You know, most recently, especially this year, I've been asked more frequently than ever what I think about the markets. And this is by both clients and friends. And I was confused about it at first. I'm thinking, well, why this year? Why are you talking to me about it more this year than any other year? And then it occurred to me that people are confused. And I'm beginning to understand. Um, Especially as it relates to investing this year. The mood of the markets has been changing and has been for several years in a sense of how the markets react to economic news. Hi, my name is Sally Boyle, the founder of SJ Boyle Wealth Planning, an advisor to folks who are anticipating retirement within the next 10 to 15 years. So let's visit this a little bit. You know, throughout my investing life, and I think most of ours, our investing lives, we've assumed that good news meant the markets would go up and bad news meant the markets would go down. And this makes intuitive sense. But in our recent investing experience, this has not been the case. And let's think about it. A few weeks back, we got some good news, right? We heard that real workers' wages had gone up. That means wages relative to inflation, and that spending was still robust. And yet, this news, which would commonly cause the market to go up, caused it to instead to decline. Why? Well, because now the assumption has been that higher wages and higher spending would fuel inflation, and that would cause interest rates to stay higher for longer. It would cause the Fed to choose to keep interest rates up and not reduce them. But then on the other side, when we got news of rising unemployment, typically a bad sign for the economy, this news was seen as a potential for rate cuts. And the market cheered. So, to quote Tom Peters, if you're not confused, you're not paying attention. So, this reversal in the expected relationship between economic data and market reactions has caused confusion for investors. And clearly, it's caused us to waffle over the last couple of years. But we've mostly lived in a world where bad news is good and good news is bad. And to some degree, I blame the media for this because they tend to spin the data to fit their preferred narrative. And the preferred narrative for the media over the last decade has been primarily negative. And I also blame it on our attention to the Fed. We pay far too much attention to the Fed and the interest rates, and that includes the economists, at least temporarily. Temporarily, they pay attention to the Fed and the interest rates solely. But when we think about it, in spite of all the negative narratives and the reactions to the news, the markets have done quite well, ignoring all and sticking to what I think, or returning to the narrative that the fundamentals support. And the fundamentals are business profitability, economic growth, and this validates why even the markets are ignoring short-term messaging and staying the fundamental course that they have followed for years. And there's some signs that we are moving back towards a more traditional market where good news is good news and bad news is bad news. But a complete transition back won't happen overnight, and it's going to take some patience. And for normalcy to completely return, I think we're going to have to see inflation farther back in our rearview mirrors. And while the data suggests that inflation has declined significantly over the last 18 to 20 months, people are still feeling the higher prices in their pocketbooks and will likely have to wait until that impact of wages and inflation offset one another. But we'll also probably have to wait until after the elections for the inflation talk to fade, as this is going to be a political hot button. And it's sure to be a focus in economic policy discussions going forward for the short term. For the short term. But the bottom line is that as the market narrative evolves over the coming months and hopefully towards a more traditional approach, don't feel like you need to adjust your sails to those prevailing winds. And remember, for those of us who are sailors, sometimes we sail with the wind and sometimes we sail right into the wind. In any case, it's my opinion that the short-term wins won't matter much in the long run. And I recently heard a conversation by Larry Fink, and I agree with him. You know, I don't fear innovation. I don't fear AI and technological progress. Or, you know, rather, I believe that the underlying currents of human progress and innovation and expanding global prosperity will likely have and will continue to drive the markets toward and forward and upward over the decades to come, as they always have. Although admittedly, there's going to be bumps and we have to be prepared for them. But as we consider the near-term future, we should remember that it's not important to be right or wrong, because we're never going to be precisely right or wrong. In fact, the best way I know not to be wrong is to refrain from guessing at all. In other words, our outcomes are best if we stay focused on what we can control and remain committed to a long-term plan. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give me a like below. If you liked this video, look at other content on our channel. And if you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments below, because I always respond to them as well. Again, thank you for visiting my channel.